Mark Devlin is a DJ, journalist, podcaster and activist. He's on the line from just down the M1 in Northamptonshire. Mark, it's been a weird couple of years, isn't it?
Well, you could say that, mate. Yeah. I don't think any of us expected to be living this way. And the interesting thing is that I've been researching all this stuff for 11 years myself. And I realized that when you look at somebody like your dad, who's been doing it for 30 plus years, that's not very long, but still, 11 years is what it
It's a
is.
long time, yeah.
And even with all the foreknowledge that I had of these groups and networks that run things from behind the scenes and preside over every aspect of our lives, I never imagined that they would go for it in the way that they did in early 2020 and throw everything they've got at us. And it does speak of desperation on their part. It does speak of them deviating from their normal way of doing things, which is in slow, steady, incremental steps. So, if anything, I guess we have to draw some optimism from the fact that they appear to be panicking and they appear to be worrying that they're not going to get all the pieces in place for where they want to take things in time for 2030. They've overreached, overplayed their hand, and it's going to be their downfall.
I agree completely. I've noticed that it does feel like a run for the finish line, and it's almost like they're so desperate to get the great reset in before the great awakening overtakes it. It seems to be that kind of battle. I actually saw a tweet where you asked how it was even possible to believe the 9/11 narrative. Obviously, we've just gone past the 11th of September. Do you see parallels between 9/11 and COVID?
I do. And in the video that I put out most recently, a couple of days ago, I was making the point that the reason we're going through this situation now is because we failed to heed the warning signs to humanity that the 9/11 event brought. We didn't put this tyranny down. We didn't put this evil, this threat down 20 years ago. And so it's come right back to bite us on the arse in 2020, 2021. And it falls on us, the generation active today, to do the job that humanity failed to do 20 years earlier. All the warning signs were there. I myself am guilty of not heeding those warning signs in 2001 because I wasn't awake then. I was very much a matrix dweller. I was just DJing. I was just out doing parties, having fun. I just lived for music and the next gig and didn't give any kind of thought to all the stuff that I'm researching and presenting now. And I actually swallowed, to my great shame, the official story of 9/11 when it first broke. It wasn't until some years later that I came to realize what a monumental scam it was. So I have to remain mindful that there are many people around at the moment who are in a similar mind state to what I was back in 2001. But even so, I have to question how it is possible to still be asleep and still buying the lies of the mainstream media and the government in 2021, because it's so bloody obvious now. It's so blatant. The lies are so clear. And what we're being told in terms of how we're being asked to live our lives is so farcical and so ridiculous that it even feels sometimes like they're trying to make people wake up. They're trying to force us to see what's being done. You know, if anyone's still ignorant to the real picture in 2021, then it's a choice. They've chosen ignorance because there's very little excuse anymore.
No, I agree. What I find is very strange is people's willingness to believe what their television tells them over what their own eyes tell them. I always like people that locked down for the first 3 weeks and panicked and didn't go out and sanitized everything, or whatever. People went to some crazy levels. Certainly in the village I live in, there were signs on people's doors to tell people not to knock on the door. So people got, I give people the first 3 weeks because you didn't know. So it's like, okay, I'll give you that. But now it's been nearly 2 years and people are still believing what the television's telling them, even though their own life experiences are polar opposite to that. I do find it very, very strange. And it almost feels like it's a psychological thing, that it's not just a plain they're ignorant or stupid, but they've almost been beaten into submission psychologically. Do you think there's anything in that?
Yeah, it's been psychological warfare, what's been done to us these past 18 months. And you've had experts in these fields coming out of organizations like SAGE, Behavioral Insights Team, and of course Tavistock. And their full-time job is to manipulate the human psyche. It's what they do. And they're very, very good at it. And so they've been using things like this technique known as confusion marketing, which is used in the advertising industry. And that deliberately bombards the consumer with conflicting messages. So they're told one thing 1 minute and something completely different the next, which is the polar opposite of it. Sound familiar to anyone?
Yeah.
And this is what's being done to us now. The government will tell you one thing 1 minute, we're not going to jab 12 to 15-year-old kids. And the very next day, they'll come out and say, actually, we are. And they know exactly what they're doing. A lot of people think it's down to Boris Johnson being this bumbling oaf and it's the government being incompetent. They're not being incompetent. They're just following the script that's being given to them by these behavioral psychologists and these sick, demented freaks coming out of Sage and these other places. And that's what's being done to us. And I think a lot of people have just been holding tight, hoping that things will get back to normal, thinking that if they wear their mask, take their jab, stand in line behind the bits of tape at the supermarket, do everything the government tells them, then we can get back to normal. But it must be slowly dawning on people that it's not the plan for things to ever get back to normal. I think this is what a lot of musicians have been doing. And this is going to be a main feature of my upcoming book, Musical Truth Volume 3, where I'm examining the reaction of famous musicians to what's been going on. And it's quite easy because, for the most part, most of them have said absolutely nothing about it.
No, exactly.
Most of those that have commented on it have been towing the official line, telling their fans to stay indoors, stay safe, wear your mask, all of this. There's very, very few honorary exceptions. And I'm calling these names out in the book and giving them props and kudos, Van Morrison, Eric Clapton, Ian Brown, and a few others, not many others.
No.
But most musicians seem to think, and DJs as well, that if they just do everything they're told and hold tight, then they can get their gigs back and they can start touring again and everything can get back to normal. And like I say, it must be dawning on these people now that, it's taken a while, isn't it? I thought things would be back on track by now. So it's taken a long while for the penny to drop, but we have to hope that it is. And I think there are some signs that that's finally starting to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you completely. I found it very odd that people in an industry that has been absolutely decimated have been so unwilling to speak up against the people that are decimating them. So this is kind of a bit of a crystal ball question, but how do you feel the winter pans out in your mind? What do you see happening going forward?
Well, we had the announcement the other day. It was another example of this confusion marketing technique that there were going to be no vaccine passports rolled out in England through the winter. Then pretty much the very next day, we get Boris Johnson's plan A and plan B, and plan B involves the possible rollout of vaccine passports. So again, it's just mashing up the minds of the public so they don't know if they're coming or going. But I think there is optimism to be drawn from the fact that we had the announcement in the first place that vaccine passports are going to be scrapped. And in my view, that's only because there's been huge public resistance to it. And they keep an eye on these things, they monitor what people are saying on social media and on YouTube threads and chat threads and forums and all this. They've probably got AI bots as well that spot all the different patterns and stuff and report back to them.
Absolutely.
And they would have got the feedback that there is massive public disapproval of the idea of vaccine passports. And they would have assessed that and thought, actually, I don't think we can go with this winter because it's going to expose the agenda too much and it's going to be too obvious, so we need to hold back on it. The doom mongers and the naysayers will say, well, they've only postponed it. It's only going to come in further down the line. But we do have to be grateful for these things when they occur. And we do have to reflect that it's because we, as a collective, the general public, have made it very clear that we're not having these things. And there's going to be massive disapproval for them that they've decided to roll back on them. So I think they're not going to go as hardline and tyrannical this winter as they would have liked to have done and as they did last year, because they realise if they push things too far, if they get just that little bit too, optimistic and hopeful in terms of furthering the agenda, they're going to expose themselves too much. So I think they're going to tread carefully. And they're going to do things in slow, steady steps, going back to their normal way of operation. And we've just got to keep our activism and our opposition to what's going on stepped up. It's just got to be massive non-compliance with the agenda. And I think more and more people are coming on board with that as it slowly dawns on them that they've been monumentally duped, particularly those that took 2 doses of the vaccine thinking, oh, well, at least society will open back up for me when I've done this. And now they're being told that actually it might not. And they're getting all these confusing messages and stuff. So it's only going to lead to more numbers coming on our side and boosting this massive public pushback that needs to continue.
Absolutely. I'll drink to that. Cheers for this, Mark. And hopefully I'll speak to you again soon, and I'll see you at one of the protests, I'm sure.
Oh, no doubt. No doubt. Cheers, mate.
Cheers, Mark.